Hey, this is Max here. So I've been using Make for the last 4 years, and in this tutorial I want to teach you all the most important features of Make so that you can create smart scenarios that are going to help you to save time, even if you're not so super duper techy, even if you're not a programmer, and even if you have never used a tool like this before. So the first thing we need to do, if you haven't already, is to create an account at the Make website. And because they were so kind to sponsor this video, you can grab my link in the description below, and then you get 1 month of their pro plan with 10,000 operations for free. Now, and then I want to give you a quick overview of Make so that you know where to find everything before we're going to dive deeper into the scenarios. So this is the first thing that you see when you log in, and this is basically just a quick overview of your usage on your current plan. So for example, over here you see that I used currently 42% of my operations and 1% of my data transfer. And then down here you can also see per day how much you have been using. And then here you can also see when your usage is resetting. So then it goes back to 0%. Now then the team. So this is personally the feature that I'm using because I'm just on my own right. But this is really handy if you maybe have multiple team members or maybe even multiple teams. You could, for example, create a sales team, a HR team, maybe an automation team. And then with this feature, you can basically make sure that only the right people can access certain scenarios. So super duper handy if you work with multiple people. And then over here, the scenarios. So this is basically where the magic is happening. This is where you create your automations and workflows, which they call scenarios. And then over here, you can see some of the modules that are in that scenario, the title, the folder that you put it in, how many operations it has been using, and how much data transfer it has been using. But in a bit, I will explain everything about those scenarios. Then over here you find templates. I find this a really cool place to get some inspiration of what is possible. So for example, over here, I could search by an app. I could say, okay, give me all the templates that contain a Gmail module. And then down here, you see all kinds of things that are possible. Now then over here, your connections. So this is not a page that you probably will go to often, but in your scenarios, you will add applications, and those applications have connections, and those connections will show up on this page. And then something that you could do on this page is you can verify, for example, if those connections are still valid, if they're still active. So that's something that you can do over here. Now then we have webhooks, and a webhook is basically a way for applications to talk to each other. So you have a URL that looks like this. So this is a Make webhook, and we could give this webhook to another tool so that that tool can send data over to Make so that we then can start a scenario. And then here you just see an overview of that and also in which scenarios you are using those, if those are currently on or off. You have to keep in mind that if they are off, then they can also not be used inside the scenario. And here you see a little truck icon, and it basically shows you if there's any data waiting to be processed for that webhook. Now then we have keys. So keys is basically the keychain inside Make for private and public keys. So this is not something that I ever needed to use for any of the applications that I'm using within Make. But if you need to use those, then the module in the module settings, you can add those private and public keys, and then it will be added over here. Now then you have devices, and this is especially cool to automate something with your smartphone. So you could, for example, send a push notification to your phone, or as soon as you make a photo, then you could also start a scenario and then do something with the data of that photo. Now then we have data stores. That sounds very techy, but it's actually pretty simple. It's basically just kind of like a spreadsheet or database where you can store data into, and then you can use that data in your other scenarios. So a data store looks like this. So you always have a key, so it's basically the unique number of that piece of data in your data store. And then here you see that I store, for example, a first name in it, an email address, and a follow-up date and time. So it's very similar to a spreadsheet, right? Now then we also have data structures. Data structures are a little bit more techy, but it's basically specifying in advance what kind of data it is in, for example, that data store. So over here we had this data store called follow-ups, right? Then I also created a data structure called follow-ups. And if I click here, edit, then you can see again that we here have first name, email, and both of these things are text type properties. And then over here, we also have follow-up date and time. And this is a date type property. So you basically just already tell in advance, like, okay, this kind of data is inside it and that kind of data it is. Like this is a text type thing, this is a date type thing, and so on. And now that you know where to find everything inside Make, we're going to dive into scenarios. So first I want to show you an existing scenario, and then we're going to build 2 scenarios from scratch. So let's go over to scenarios, and over here you can see that I already created an example. So this is the scenario diagram. This is the history. So this is basically everything that has happened. So you can see that I edited a few times and that there were also some successful scenario executions and then also how long that took. And then over here, you can also find incomplete executions. So this is an option that you can set. And then basically whenever there is an error or something goes wrong, then you can say, okay, store it into the incomplete execution folder. Now let's start here with the diagram. So over here, you can see that this scenario has 3 modules and each module belongs to a different application. So each application usually also has different kind of modules inside of it because you can do different things with those applications. So that is also specified down here what kind of module it is. So you see that this module is going to watch for new responses in Typeform. This is going to add a row to a Google Sheet, and this is going to send an email with Gmail. Now then let me explain this first module here first, because this is what is going to be triggering or starting our scenario whenever there is some new data. So over here you see this thunder icon, and you might be wondering, what is that thunder icon for? And this circle with that icon inside of it basically indicates when or how often that scenario is going to check if there is new data and when it is going to start. So if I click this, then you can see that this Typeform module will run immediately when there is new data. But sometimes you also only have the option to run it at regular intervals of, for example, 15 minutes. And then over here you will see a clock icon. So then every 15 minutes it is going to check, in this case, if there is a new response on a Typeform. But whenever it is possible, usually you would set it to immediately, because then your scenario is just going to start right away as soon as possible, and it also doesn't have to waste operations on checking if there is any new data. So this module first. So over here you can see that I've set up a connection. I'll also show you how to do this in a bit. But so then whenever this module is going to receive data, the scenario is going to start. So it will follow the line to the next module, and then it's going to add a row to a Google Sheet. So in this Google Sheet, you see over here that I already made the connection. Then we said here the mode is select spreadsheet and sheet. So I selected here the spreadsheet and the sheet. So the spreadsheet here is contact form submissions. So you can see that over here. So we already have some entries. And then over here you can see table contains headers. So headers is this first column over here with name, email address, message, and time. And then we map variables from that previous module in here, so that all the data we're going to get over here will be automatically mapped and then added to this Google Sheet as a new row. So I mapped here, hello, what's your name? What is your email address? And how can I help? So if I want to do that, I can also remove this, right? And then over here I can say, hello, what is your name? And then we mapped a variable from the previous module. Also, when I hover this, you also see that that module that it belongs to is like bouncing in and out, right? So that also tells you where it belongs. Now then we go over to the next one to send an email with Gmail. But in between this, you see that this line compared to this one has a name here and also this filter icon underneath. And it means that whenever there is some data coming, they call it the bundle of data, is going through this line, through the modules, and then over here. And then over here, inside this filter, we can set up a condition. So we basically check if that data, for example, in this case, exists or is maybe equal to something or contains something. And then only when that condition is a match, only then will the bundle of data continue to the next module. So in this case, I'm checking if there is an email address. So if the email address exists, only then will it continue to the Gmail module, because if there's no email address, I can also not send an email, right? Now then over here we have the Gmail module, which is sending an email. I've set up the connection. We send it to an email address. So here you see again that I mapped the variable from the Typeform module. Then we have here the subject, and then over here we have hey And then you can also see that I mapped the person's name as a variable inside this content block. And then I'm going to demonstrate this scenario. So then I'm going to click here, run once, and the run once is especially handy to run your scenario once, which is handy for testing or demonstrating something. Then I will go over to my type form, and over here I will type a name, and then here an email address. And then I will just say here, hey. I click here submit, I go back over to the scenario, and then you see in real time how the scenario is being executed. So over here you see this white bubbles. So these white bubbles basically means like, okay, here there was an operation, something has happened, here was an operation, and here was an operation. So now this scenario execution also used 3 operations that count towards your quota of your plan, right? But then over here you can click this, and then you can see also what kind of data we got from this type form. So over here you see when it was submitted, and then here mappable answers. Then I can also say over here, okay, hello, what is your name? Tim. What is your email address? Now, tim@example.com. How can I help? Hey. So the data that I just entered inside that form, right? Then it would go over to the Google Sheet. And then over here, you see that it added these values to our Google Sheet. If we go over here, you now see also Tim and tim@example.com. Hey. And then also the date and time that the form was submitted. Then we go over here, and then you see that it passed the filter because the condition was a match. So over here, we checked if the email address exists, and then you see this green check mark, and it means that yes, this condition was a match, so it will continue to the next module, and it's going to send an email here to tim@example.com, and then over here content, it says hey Tim. So that's how that works. Then I want to demonstrate it one more time, and then we're going to leave the email address out so that you can also see what happens when it does not pass the filter. So over here I would say Ben, then I leave the email address blank. And then over here, I'm just going to type something random. We submit this. Then you see that the scenario has been executed. There were 2 operations. So here you see this is the data that we got. What is your name? How can I help? And then there was no email address, right? Then it has added a row to a spreadsheet. So over here you see now Ben, no email address. Then here our message, and here the date and time that it was submitted. And over here, you see that there was no operation here because it did not pass the filter. You can also see this 0 over here. And now when I click this, you see over here, it says email address here, empty, exist. So then over here, we have this red icon that means like, okay, this condition was not a match, so we're not going to continue with the scenario. So I hope that this helps you to understand the basics of a scenario. So now I want to create 2 scenarios from scratch so that you can really see how that works. So we go over to scenarios, and then over here we go to create a new scenario. And then what I want to do is I want to start this scenario as soon as there is a new appointment inside Calendly. So Calendly, in case you do not know it, it is a scheduling platform that people can use to pick a spot inside your calendar for an appointment. So whenever somebody does that, I want to start a scenario, and then I want to add a task to Todoist, and I will also want to send a confirmation email to that person. So we go over here, and the first thing I do is I give it a name. So over here I say Calendly, and then add task and send email. So then we add here the trigger module, so what is going to be starting the scenario, and then I look here for Calendly. So then over here the Calendly app shows up. I click this, and then you see all the different modules for this app. So in this case, we're going to watch for new events. And you can see here that this module is an instant module. And then when I click this, you can also see over here that we have this thunder icon again. So this scenario is going to start immediately or instantly when this module is going to receive some data. Now then we have to set up the connection to Calendly. This is sometimes slightly different. So in this case, we have to set up a webhook. So we do that here by clicking add. Then we have to give the webhook a name. So I just call this Calendly events. Then we have to set up a connection. You click here add. We also have to give the connection a name. And then we click here save. Then it goes to Calendly, and because I'm already logged in, it will just do this now. In the background, we go back over here to the scenario. You see that the connection was successful. Then over here, we have to say, okay, what kind of events do we want to trigger this scenario with? So in this case, invitee was created, not canceled. So I only select this one over here. And then we have to select the organization and the user. So here we say select from list. Then over here, I select the organization, and then we also have to select the user, which is me. Then I click here, save, and then basically our connection with Calendly is made. So now what we can do is we can also test this. We click here, run once. So now it's waiting for data, right? So over here, I'm going to make an appointment with myself. So here I say confirm, and then I do here emma.do@gmail.com. Now here I just type something random, right? And then I click here schedule event. And then over here, you see now that we got some data. So we see when the event was created. So this is now. Then we see the email address of that person. And then over here, we also see the first name and the last name of that person and what kind of answers they gave to our questions. So over here, you can already see that this is slightly different than Typeform, right? So you always have to look first, okay, in what way do I receive that data from that application? So in this case, what I want to have is I want to use this email address from this person, but I also want to get the start date so that I can add it to Todoist. But by default, you can see over here that it does not show up the start date and time of this call, unfortunately. So what we have to do is we have to add another module, and then we look for another Calendly module. And in this case, I look here for get an event, returns information about an event. So then over here, we go here, and then the connection is already set up because we did that in the previous step, right? It will just remember that. And over here, it is going to ask for the event URI. And then here it also gives an example of that. Now that sounds a bit tacky, but then you just go, you look here, okay, this, I go over here, and then we see over here, here event. And then here we have this scheduled events URL. So then I go here and then I just add that variable for the events URI over there. So here, events. So here I look for event and I click here now, okay. I click save and then I click run once again and then we schedule another event. So then over here I select a date and time. So here I click 9 in the morning and then here I do ben at example.com. I type in something random, schedule event, then it was success. And then over here, this is the data we got right here, ben at example.com. And these are the answers to those questions. And then now we also get an event with the event URI, right? So that's this URL over here that it asked for. And then now you see that it was created at, and then you can also see here the start time of this event and also the end time of the event. And now I can also create a task in Todoist because I know when this event is starting. So I add another module, I look for Todoist, and then here Todoist, and then what I do is I create a task, and then we have to set up the connection. I click here add, I call this Todoist, click save, then we go to Todoist, then we go back, and then boom, the connection was successful, and then now we can create a task. So I call this appointment with, and then over here, I look for the variable from the first module over here. So here with the first name, and then do space, last name. And then which project do we add this to? So here I call this tasks, and then due date, format, and then over here, date and time. And then here, I'm now going to enter the start time. So I click here, and now I click OK, I click save, I click run once, and let's now see what happens if we're going to schedule a call again. So I go back here, I have to select a different time, and then now we call this Lara at example.com. How would you describe your business? Okay, schedule event, confirmed. Then over here, we got the data. So here we have the email address, first name, last name, answers to the questions. Then now it also got here the start time of our call. And then now it created a task over here, appointment with Lara Do. So if I go now over here, then we also see here in tasks that it says appointment with Lara Do, the 4th of May, 4:30. So that's also here, 4:30, 4th of May. Now then I want to do one more thing. I also want to send an email to that person. So here I look for the Gmail module because I'm using Gmail. I send an email to that person. I have the connection already set up. Then I send it here 2, and then I look here for the email address variable. So I see this down here. Another thing that you can also do that is a bit faster, you can also search for items. So I can just type in email here, and then when I hover this, then you can also see that this module here is like bouncing in and out, right? And also a little hack here, you see this number 1 in this square. You can also see this number 1 over here. So then you know like, okay, this variable belongs to that first module over there. So I click this to edit. Then I say subject, call confirmed. And then the content, then I would say here, hey, and I'm looking for the first name of that person, first name. Now, and then you would write the rest of the email. I click in now, okay. I click save. I click run once. Then we're going to schedule another event over here. So here we say Nico at example.com. Then here we type something random. Then the call is confirmed. We get the data over here. So again, email address, first name, last name. Then over here now we also get the start time. Then the task was created, appointment with Nico Do. So I see here is, appointment with Nico Do, and then also at the start date and time. And now also an email has been sent to Nico. And over here you can also see the content of the email. So right now it would only say, hey, Nico. Now, that is this first scenario. Then I want to show you another example, and then we're also going to use something that they call functions and routers. So we're going over to our scenarios, and then we're going to create a new scenario. Now, what I want to do is I want to start this scenario whenever there is a new email inside my Gmail inbox, and then I want to send an email back to that person to let them know when I'm going to reply. And I want that email to be different depending on the day of the week. So if it's just a work day, I just want to say, I will get back to you as soon as possible. If it's during the weekend, I want to say, I will get back to you on Monday. So to do that, we're going to add a trigger module over here. So what is going to be starting our scenario. So I type here Gmail, and then we're going to watch for emails. And then over here, you see that the connection is already set up. I have to select a folder in which I want to watch for new emails. So I'm going to look for my inbox, and then filter type, simple filter, criteria, and I only want to get unread emails. So if I've already read them, then they will not show up in here. And do we mark those emails read when they're fetched? No, I do not want to do that. And then we have the maximum number of results. So here they also explain it, but this is a scheduled trigger. So that means in this case, that's going to check every 15 minutes if there is a new email. So it's not an instant module, because then it would just start immediately as soon as there is a new email. This module works differently. It has to check for new data every once in a while, in this case, every 15 minutes. And then here you can set the maximum number of results. So if you leave this to 1, and every 15 minutes, it is going to check for new emails. And then even if there's 200 new emails, then it will only get 1, and then it's going to do something with that. And then the next time it will grab the next one, the next one, and the next one. What I want to do here is I want to set this, for example, to 10. So then it will get a maximum of 10 new emails at once. And then in the one scenario execution, it will get 10 bundles of data, and then boom, it will push that through our scenario. So I will set this to 10. I click here, OK. And then over here, we say, when do we want to start? Do we want to start from now on? Emails after a specific date, all the emails, or select a first email manually. Now I'm just going to say from now on. Now then I want to split our scenario into 2 routes so that I can easily send 2 different emails back depending on the day of the week. So what I'm going to do here is I have here a router module. So I type here router, flow control, router. And now you see that we have 2 routes in our scenario. So then it will follow here. It goes into this router. This router is basically not doing anything. It will just send the bundle of data from our email up here first, and then down there first. Now, what I want to do first is I want to set up those filters so that it will not follow both paths at once, but only when it matches that day of the week. Now then I go over here, and then over here I say week day. And then we have to set up a condition. And to set up that condition, we have to check the day of the week. So there's something really handy. There's this handy page. I will also link to this in the description below so that you can check it out. These are tokens for date and time formatting. So here you can find things like the month name, the day of the month. So here you see also examples, 1, 2, 3, 4, 30, 31. Here, day with the ordinal. So here we have 1st, 2nd, 30th, and so on. But we are looking for the day of the week. So over here we have then 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Over here we have the abbreviation for the day name. And here we have the full day name. So here you see Sunday, Monday, Friday, Saturday. So what I want to do is I want to use the day name. I find that easiest for myself. You could also use the number of the day of the week, but I find that a bit more confusing. So we're going to use this over here. Now to do that, what we do here is first we say not weekday, but we say weekend. And then here we check condition. And then we have here the date, right? Now we cannot just insert this and then say equal to Saturday, because then it will not be equal to that, because then you just see here also the example, it just says 22nd of April 2022, right? It does not say day week. So what we need to do is we need to go over here to the functions. So here you have functions, and with those functions you can basically manipulate the mappable variables of the other modules. So what I want to do is I do not want to use math. I do not want to use text functions. I want to use the date and time functions. So what we can do here is we can format a date to a different format. So over here, you see an example of a date and time that we get. And then over here, we have to give those tokens. So here you see DD, YYYY that we want to format it to. So you can also look that up then here what that means. So over here we see so that means the month number, right? DD, day of the month, YYYY is just the 4-digit year. So what I want to do is I want to format the date. And then we go back to before the first semicolon. We go back to the star. Underneath the star are all the variables. And then over here, we insert the date of that email. Now then we format the date to DDDD, because you can see over here that DDDD stands here for the day name. And then we can also say here is equal to Saturday. So my weekend is on Saturdays and Sundays. So then I say here is equal to Saturday, or, and then I just copy this and I paste this in here, is equal to Sunday. So now, whenever it's weekend, it is going to follow up here if the date of that email is equal to Saturday or Sunday. And that works because we formatted that date to the day of the week, and then we compare it to the day of the week. So when it's weekend, it will follow this path, but it will still always follow this path because there's no filter there, right? So we could basically do the same thing again. We could just copy this thing and we could say is equal to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but that's quite a lot of work, right? So what I want to do is over here, we want to enable the fallback route. So that means that it will be used in case where a bundle cannot continue from another router. And then we do that, click here yes, because then you see here okay, then you also see that this icon changes from this arrow to this arrow. So then if it does not continue over here, then we know it is not Saturday or Sunday. So then it will take the fallback route. So then we know that it is the weekday. Now then the only thing that we have to do is we have to set up the modules, send an email. So we want to send the email to, and then we want to send it to here, the sender email address, because we want to send it back to that person. And then over here, I do RE, right? This means reply. And then we do the subject line. And then over here, I want to say, hey, I just wanted to let you know that I got your email, and that I'll get back to you after the weekend, max. So it works like this, right? Then I click here, okay. And then what I can do, I can recreate this again, or I can also right click this and then you can also clone it. Whoop. and then we do this. We can right click this, delete module, we click the auto align, and then we would have to change this text, of course, that it says something like, hey, instead of getting back to you after the weekend, it would say, I will get back to you as soon as possible. But then our scenario is almost done, right? So then one thing I want to make sure is I'm sending replies to people automatically, but I want to make sure I'm not replying to replies of other people, because imagine somebody else also has an auto replier, then it will just reply. So we do not want to do that, right? Over here, we want to set up a filter to make sure it was not a reply before. So I say here, not a reply. And then I'm just going to say here, okay, the subject line does not contain case insensitive RE and then colon. So this way it could not start again and again and again whenever I send an email, somebody sends an email back, somebody sends an email back, and so on. So yeah, what is next? I really hope that this tutorial helped you to understand the basics of Make, that it helps you to know where to find everything, how to create a scenario, how to set up modules and connections, filters, how to use some of the functions, how to create routers, all those things. But there's way more that you can do with Make. And if you want to learn more stuff like this, then I created a really cool 4-hour in-depth course. It's called Make Mastery. And if you follow this link or click the link in the description below, then you can see if that course is maybe something for you. And if you have any questions about this tutorial, just drop them in the comments below and then I'll try to help you as best as I can.